Creative Tools for Social Cohesion, presented by Rakesh Rootsman Rak, roots in permaculture.com, interviewed by Yolanda Decken, consciousearthalliance.com.
People want to start communities, eco-villages, master units, intentional communities, all these kind of things, which is fantastic. It's great because at the end of the day, we are pack animals, and as such, we want to work together, we want to live together, we want to support each other. Unfortunately, as we can see, the system that we live in is designed to make us feel separate. It's designed to make us feel independent, that we must compete against each other. And this separation is, it's not just a separation from each other as other human beings, but also separation from our planet, from our surroundings, from nature. And it's this disconnect. This disconnect creates so much fear in people because this having to be able to do everything yourself, to be so strong, to be able to meet all of your needs on your own, is, very few people actually get an opportunity to learn those skills. So the only way that they can actually survive in the system is to join the system and be part of a system that that then gives them, so they can earn a livelihood. Whether it's a right livelihood or not is, in many cases, quite unlikely. But to earn some kind of a livelihood so that they can pay for their house, so they can pay for their food, etc., etc. So, and this separation, this isolation, this disconnect from each other and from our surroundings, and as I say, creates fear in people. But what if I can't work? What if I can't get this? What if I can't? And it's this fear that allows the system to to basically control us. And this is something I saw pretty much from before I even left school. I mean, I actually left school mentally at the age of about 12, 13, because I saw how the system was working. And I'm the kind of person I want to, if someone's going to tell me something, I want to understand it. I'm not just going to be told something and just believe it. I don't care who you are, how old you are, whether I should respect you or not. If you're going to tell me something, explain it to me properly so that I actually understand it, and then I can believe you. But in many cases at school, I was told things and I was saying, sorry, sir, but that's not how the world is. It's like this. And my reward for telling the truth was to be physically beaten at school. So I had a huge distrust of school, and which ultimately, so I left school pretty much mentally at the age of 12, hence failing every single exam that I took, because I just never went to class, and I never really cared for much of their instructions. So, as I say, this separation, many of us, we really want to be in packs, we want to be in groups, we want to be there to support each other. But because the system right the way from a young age is telling us, no, we need to be separate, we need to compete against each other, we need to be the best in class. And if you look at it, if you really think about it, if one child is the best at mathematics in a class, but they're second or third best in I don't know, science or languages or something, then in those classes they failed. So very few people are actually successful in school. Most people somehow are failures, and this is how the system builds us up to being. And for those who really want to connect with each other and really be part of a collective, they feel this, they feel almost like there's something wrong with them, to want to ask for help, to say, hey, I don't don't completely get that. Can someone explain that? Can you help me with that part? I understand this part very well, very, very, very well, but this part I'm not so sure. Can someone help me with that? We feel almost like embarrassed to ask people, to admit that we don't know everything, and that, and because of this insecurity, many people almost feel like, yeah, like there's something wrong with wanting to ask for help and to be part of a collective. So there's very, very, very few examples of humans coming together and truly living together. The whole system, the way in which the system is designed, it's designed not to actually encourage us to really, truly work collaboratively. So we have very few good role models. If we look at most eco-villages and intentional communities, you'll see most of them, sad to say, are in turmoil. Sorry to say that, but that's the truth. The fact is that, the idea is fantastic. The idea is really great, and honor the people who are strong enough to stand up and try and make these happen. And what we see is that building houses, quite easy. Growing food, no problem. Making electricity, all these tangible things are actually really straightforward. But living with other human beings in a culture where we have no real good experiences of truly hearing each other, truly understanding each other, truly, really, how can you say it, truly being so joyful at all the differences that there are between us. I don't know how to explain that better, but truly to recognize the differences that there are between us and really celebrate that. Because we're not given those experiences, many people feel like there's something wrong with them, and for thinking that way, and therefore many people get depressed because they can't. And so when we actually get to creating these eco-villages, we see, because we don't have the experiences of truly living well together, invariably many of these projects fail. So if we look at many of the eco-villages around the world that are still in existence 20, 30 years on, what we see is they've gone through so many different iterations, so many different ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs, of having to completely reinvent themselves until they find a place where they can communicate well, where they can express themselves, etc., and then can truly live together. And so, yeah, it's all good and well, all the best intentions in the world is not enough to start an eco-village. It's not enough to start an intentional community. There really needs to be some deep work that takes place. And with all of the tools that we have at our disposal, certain things are absolutely common amongst all of them. I guess the first thing is, and I haven't written this down, so I'm just doing this on the fly, so forgive me if I miss one or two, but maybe some of the key things are a common vision. Being really clear on why we are together. And probably the two tools that I'd like to talk about, this is the starting point for both Dragon Dreaming and for Sociocracy. They both start with everyone in the project expressing. So Dragon Dreaming has a really beautiful way to do it. It starts off by asking a very generative, open-ended question, something along the lines of, in the next 5 years, what needs to happen in this intentional community to really make you passionately want to be involved? So everyone answers that. What needs to happen in the next 5 years in this project to make you passionately want to be involved? Everyone has time to digest this question and think about it and feel into it. And there's lots of different ways in which that can be done. And then everyone has an opportunity to express it. From that, we can then create some kind of a common, what's common amongst everyone. And from that, we create some kind of a common vision and then check with each other. Check in. Does this represent? Does this still make you excited? Is this the project you want to be in? Yes or no? And if this excites you, then yeah, let's keep going. And so pretty much Sociocracy and Dragon Dreaming start in pretty much the same way, with that common vision. And then later on, if anyone joins the project, again, they need to go through that process of understanding that vision, of expressing themselves to see, do they really fit into this project? Can they modify the project, or is their understanding of this project so different to ours that actually perhaps maybe you don't really fit in? So if it's, for example, a vegan eco village and someone, a vegan drug-free, alcohol-free kind of community, and someone wants to come in who is a committed meat eater, who wants to do drugs and have parties all night long with heavy metal music, and maybe you're not so compatible with our project. And so we have to accept. Many people talk about inclusivity. There's certain limits to inclusivity. And, as far as I'm concerned, you need to find what's common with your group, of what's going to, what's important for your group to kind of move together and to move forward together. So other areas that are really important is to continuously hear, so once you've got the vision out there, you then need some way in which to continuously hear back from people, of getting feedback of what's happening, what's going well, what's not going so well, so that you can use that feedback to continuously fine-tune your project. And so this is where Sociocracy and Dragon Dreaming differ slightly. And maybe if I can look at Sociocracy first. Sociocracy, basically, it works on the principle that you have a vision that everyone has said, this is what we want to achieve. And then every proposal you make is made based against, does this help us to achieve and to reach where we want to get to, or does it take us away from where we say we want to arrive at? And so now every decision we make is based against logic. It's not based against, oh, I like this person, I don't like that person, so I'm going to go with this. It's got nothing to do with personalities. It's got nothing to do with, basically it's down to pure logic. The other important thing is whether what you're never looking to do is you're never looking to find a perfect solution. Imagine if you have 20 people who are all gardeners, all of whom make compost, and you were to ask them what is the perfect way to make compost. Do you think that you would ever get 20 gardeners to agree on the best way to make compost? Everyone has their experience, and for every single person, their way of making compost is perfect, because it's the solution they have found that works in their particular situation. So for each person is correct. Each person is correct. That's their reality. But to say there is one reality that is correct for everybody, you're looking to try and achieve something that's almost impossible. So instead of looking to make a decision based on finding a solution that everyone thinks is perfect, what you're looking to do is finding the highest common denominator, the highest point at which everyone agrees that, yeah, if we do this, it's going to help us to get to where we want to go. And I don't see any reason as to why this proposal is going to stop us from getting there. That's the key to it. I see, If you've got a valid logical reason as to why, if we accept this proposal, it stops us from getting to that end goal, then you need to object to this. And if someone objects and just says, oh no, I think I've got a better proposal, that's not an objection, that's a new proposal, which can be handled separately. But first of all, answer, is there any reason as to why this wouldn't work? And so in this way, we can very, very carefully, very precisely keep asking the right questions, so that we keep moving in the right direction, step by step by step by step. The other important thing with sociocracy is to recognize that that vision that we first created is not set in stone. So that vision can change at any moment. As long as the entire community consents to a change. So for example, if someone comes into the project and has a slightly different idea of how to do something, which none of you ever thought of before, and it's like really, wow, this is great, wow, I love this. Does that mean just because you didn't think of it before that you have to restrict yourselves to an old way of thinking? Now that this new person has brought in this beautiful energy, this beautiful idea, adjust. And so you can change the vision as long as everyone consents to it. So basically, sociocracy is a really dynamic, ever-changing form of governance. Dragon dreaming is, and it's really wonderful, Stephen was mentioning Aboriginal, First Nations, Australian culture, is something that was actually developed by observing and understanding Aboriginal culture. And I'm not going to disrespect, because I've never been to Australia. I've never had the pleasure of working with or living with First Nations, so I can't speak from any experience. But the way that dragon dreaming is presented from this deep work that was done working with Aboriginals and trying to bring some of that wisdom into Western culture. And so effectively, again, some of the key things that the person who started dragon dreaming observed is how many projects fail to get off the ground because the vision, they don't have a common vision, they don't have a common culture. And without that common vision and that common culture, it's very difficult for people to move collectively. So the first thing is to establish that culture. Then to try and see, in similar way to how many people understand things like song lines, and understanding how everything somehow interconnects with each other, how, going from one place to the next place, to the next place, to the next place, and all the different experiences and all the different things you see and find in each of those places, and how they interconnect, and how the next story intertwines with that, and another story intertwines with that. All these different song lines are essentially like interpreted as if it's some kind of a project plan. So if you want to deliver something, each vision, each entity within your project has its own song line, and it interacts with other things, and it intertwines, and it really beautifully intersects with all the other song lines in order to make a full story. Each one can be its own story on its own, but interconnected, it makes a much more beautiful, much more integrated story. This is how it's presented. So anyone can start a songline. Anyone can, express, well, actually, what I'm really passionate about is this. What I've got really good skills at are this. And in identifying all your different skills, identifying all your different abilities, you can then start to piece together how to actually create and complete a project. Another really important aspect of dragon dreaming is how we look at different mentalities of people. And these different mentalities also somehow interrelate with different phases of a project. So in a project, in order for a project to even start, you need a dreamer. You need someone with an idea. And, you know, if it wasn't for someone thinking out of the box, you know, and what we find is typically dreamers are people who are not restricted by what's already been done. They can dream, they can think, wow, what if we did this? What if we could fly? And what if, yeah, and they can think unchecked by reality sometimes. So, but they have this ability to think, to dream, to go beyond what is the norm. And this is a really beautiful, important gift that they have to bring to any community or any project. Because if it wasn't for this, nothing would change. Nothing new would ever happen. One of the challenges, though, with dreamers is they're not always so good at actually turning their dreams into reality. Because very often they'll just keep dreaming and dreaming and dreaming and dreaming and not know when to actually stop dreaming and when to actually turn things into reality. So we need people who can take this kind of crazy abstract idea and somehow turn it into some kind of a plan. And so this is the second mentality, the planners. And say they can take some really obscure, abstract ideas and see, well, actually, you know, you want to be building houses in tree tops, and you want to fly from one to the other. At the moment, human beings can't just fly. Really? Maybe we need to build some bridges or something instead in the meantime until we learn to fly, perhaps. So they can kind of take this crazy idea and say, well, actually, that's not really going to be feasible. You know, let's get it back down to earth a little bit and let's check it a little bit. Oh, and so it goes back to the dreamers. Oh, we can't fly. Oh, bridges. Oh, in that case, maybe we could. And all of a sudden, they start dreaming again. And they can start engaging with this process. And this is actually really essential because what we find is very often a dreamer dreams, a planner plans, they hand that on to the next group, which is the doers. But very rarely do we find that the planners go back to the dreamers to actually clarify and actually adjust things. And what this does is it makes the dreamers, you know, so by the time the planner has finished planning, hands it over to the third mentality, which is the doers. Very often the doers are not the kind of people who sit in meetings and actually listen to other people. They're just too good at doing things. So they're just going to get on with stuff. And, you know, so you give them a plan for a three-legged table with one leg shorter than the other, and they're like, ha, nonsense. Why would anyone want to build a three-legged table with one? No, I'm just going to build a three-legged table with three legs that are the same size. That's what everyone does, you know, why? And off they go and they build it. And because they know how to build tables, and that's how you build a table. Not recognizing that this table was to go into a particular corner where there's a big stone in the at that corner, and so one leg has to be shorter. And because they didn't connect to the dream, they didn't connect to the plan, the doers just went off and did it. So in other words, everyone starts to get disappointed because of this lack of communication.
Hey, Rakesh,
Yes.
it's beautiful. Is it possible to do something? I know you're amazingly creative in this, to do something with the audience. Can I ask you that? Is that possible with the dragon dreaming part?
Sure. How much time do we have left?
Half an hour.
See, I mean, it's easy to do when you're face to face because you can get people off in little groups. But on Zoom with 30, 35 people, it's
Yeah.
not so easy to split people off and get them thinking. And by the time you've done that and it comes back, it's
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I just was playing with the thought to have
yeah.
also the
If it's
audience.
face to face, then that's really easy, and that's,
I
as you
know.
know, that's invariably what I do. But online, it's much more. Yeah,
Okay.
in this
Yeah.
kind of scenario, it's a lot more difficult.
Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
What
So
about, Rakesh, what about just to ask, you know, what people's dreams are, just for some people to share? I mean, it doesn't have to be now, but whenever you think it's fit. Anyway, sorry to disturb you.
okay, all right. I'll have a think how I can integrate a bit more. I say I haven't planned any of this, so I'm just talking for the sake. Yeah, just talking, expressing whatever I can express about the different tools. So yeah, so as I say, what's really important is that each of these peoples, the dreamers, the planners, and the doers, are all absolutely essential to a project.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential. But without good communication between each group, it becomes, yeah, basically people get very frustrated and disappointed. So what's really important is that the dreamers express their dream, the planners interpret that into some kind of a plan. They go back to the dreamers to say, okay, this is possible, that's not possible, here's some ideas, and then the dreamers can dream again a little bit more and hand it back to the planners so they can, so you have this little loop of going between them until both parties are kind of happy that yeah, all right, this is the dream that we want to now put into action. The same process then needs to happen between the planner and the doer, so that the planners and the doers are again in sync in pretty much the same way. And then all parties are in sync. Now the fourth phase is probably the phase that most people do not even consider, and is probably one of the most important phases of a project, which is the celebration or reflection phase. So what we mean by celebration is when you do something, whatever step you make towards achieving something, it should be recognized and celebrated for, for what it is. That, hey, come on guys, look at what we've done, isn't this great, wonderful? But it's also an opportunity to reflect, to check on what the vision was, to check what we've actually done, and to see how do the two relate. So it's a way of continuously getting feedback to check on how our project is actually going and how well we're doing and what we are actually achieving, especially in terms of the intangibles, so the joys, the fun, the laughs, the celebrate, just, yeah, checking in with the less tangible results rather than just, hey, look, we have built this, whatever it is we're going to build. So this is dragon dreaming. And so what we have is we actually end up having, as say, the project is also in these kind of phases where you have a vision, so you have a dreaming phase, you have a planning phase, you have a doing phase, and a celebration phase. But actually, in reality, what it is you dream the dream, you plan the dream, you celebrate the dream. You do the dream, and then you celebrate the dream. So yeah, anyway, so there's these recursive loops within loops within loops, and so this gives us a lot of flexibility in how we design and how we continuously celebrate. And this is the crucial part, is when we're working together because very often and I can't remember, I think maybe it was Eckhart Tolle who said that we are human beings, not human doings. We continuously think of ourselves and refer to ourselves by what we have done, as opposed to just being and just allowing us. So this continuous opportunity to celebrate, to reflect, and to support each other, to congratulate each other, is, rather than just keep achieving, is a really essential part of working well together. So, okay, are there any questions about either sociocracy or dragon dreaming or community living in general? Is there anything you want me to cover? I mean, for example, what are some of the most for those, especially those who are living in community or working together, what are some of the worst things that you experience when living together, when working together, when trying to do things with other people? What's some of the most difficult aspects of working together? So I see a question, do you combine them or choose one of them? I'm not quite sure what that question is referring to. Is that
I think the techniques you're bringing in, I suppose.
So do sociocracy and dragon dreaming merge together? If that's the question, then they can do. They certainly do complement each other quite well. In fact, when I start any Sociocratic process, I use the dragon dreaming process for sure, 100%. And then many things such as such as the kind of song lines and the kind of understanding, where their passions are and what have you, and how to move together. You can, from dragon dreaming, you can very, very, very easily bring that into sociocracy as well. So remember, at the end of the day, a tool is just a tool. At the end of the day, you want to be a community that lives together, and you need to find the tools that work for you. A tool is just there to support you, and the tool is not that's not the kind of what's the right term? That's not the objective. The objective is you living together, and the tools are there just to support. So if you need to tweak and adjust each tool a little bit, that's actually great. If you can figure out how to adjust them to make them safe and to make them really much richer for you, which could include, as say, combining things, then absolutely, why not?
Yeah, there's an interesting question also from Paul White. What were some of the largest community projects failures you went through, and what did you learn as a takeaway? That's a funny one. I always hear you learning things, so maybe you have a juicy one for us.
So some of the largest. So I used to teach eco-village design education courses, and in Denmark, the great thing there is that it really, the government and actually supports communities to live together. There's all kinds of different tax breaks and various things that actually support communities and so on, unlike many other countries. And so you see lots and lots and lots of examples, and you see, communities that have been, and we normally would take people to see communities from, that are literally just forming to having been for 30, 40 years. And what you see, especially with the older ones, is that their original dream, their original vision was really, really clear. For example, one community, which is about 30 years old, or probably 40 years old by now, I haven't been there for quite some time, they formed around a very particular spiritual guru, so Danish equivalent of Steiner. And they were really, really clear, this, we want to live in this particular way according to this person's spiritual teachings. And what they found is within 10 years, there were so many people attracted to that community, but barely 10% even knew anything about the spiritual leader's actual vision. And they were attracted not because of the spiritual teachings, but just because it was a community that really was somehow beautiful and very, very attractive for them to live in. You know, where they could get land, where they could get a house, where they could grow their own food, where they could set up their own little mini cooperative projects and so on and so forth. So, so while they had this initial vision, they eventually had to kind of just totally dismantle that and completely restart again in order to, because, you know, almost no one was living up to that anymore. And actually, if I think about it, many of the projects that I see really struggle because they just don't have the tools to actually be able to support each other. And some of the biggest projects I've seen turn around are the ones who have adopted tools such as sociocracy. So once, you know, so because quite often when people come to a project, they come imagining that other people who have joined this project have the same vision. And so, yeah, but as the project starts to progress and as things start to really get going, people realize, you know, so when people are answering a question, because people have different end goals, they want to go actually in very different directions. What they, you know, so for one person, that's not appropriate, whereas for someone else, that is completely appropriate because that's the direction they want to go in. So there's this conflict, there's this tension, and they can't make those decisions. And so until you have a really clear common vision, you're always going to have tension in your projects. And so I remember working with one particular project where when I got there, out of 18 people, only 4 people were actually talking to each other. They'd been together, I don't know, something like 10 years, and there was so much conflict in that project that most people just wouldn't speak to each other. And so we ran a series of sociocracy courses and various other things there. And by the end of it, I think something like a good 10, 14 of them were starting to talk to each other and they could communicate. And now what you find is they've actually set up a little cooperative and they're really working well together because of, and I remember very clearly there was one particular issue that they had that was really dividing the project, that was really a big source of tension and had really split many people, and all the solutions they've tried in the past just failed because everyone had a different end goal. And so I started a process of a Socratic decision-making process. So we started off by creating a common vision of what we all wanted to achieve. I then started say a Sociocratic proposal forming exercise, which is basically everyone asks questions that if we answer these questions should help us to find a solution. So I know that sounds a bit strange, but it really works beautifully. So everyone asked questions and then we consented. Is everyone okay with these questions? Can we finish that process? And then I left it to them to start answering it. And then I left it to them to then find a solution based on that. They then created a solution. And within, so 4 or 5 years of continuous arguments and continuous tension, within 2-3 weeks, not only had they found a solution, but they'd actually built and completed the solution. And this totally changed everything around. It totally changed their project because now it was basically to build a bridge between one part of the land and another part of the land, which basically when the waters rose in the winter meant that many people were completely cut off from the main roads and everything. So I guess some of the biggest things are really seeing how without a common vision, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to actually solve problems. But once you're really clear on what you want to achieve together, then everything becomes easy. So,
Thank you.
so I'm just looking at some of the other questions. How about online communities? How to celebrate when you're not physically together? So obviously, you know, celebrating together, it depends on your definition of celebration, obviously, first of all, you know, so part of celebration is also reflection and understanding, as well as congratulations, and enjoying, you know, celebrating what you've achieved. But you know, everything in similar way that you would do it face to face, you can still have online circles where everyone has an opportunity to express themselves. Everyone has an opportunity to say, you know, what's really going well for them. You know, typically I have a set of 4 questions which I use for reflection, which is about, you know, what's going well, what went well, what would you do differently, what is your vision, and what are your next steps. So very, very quickly, you can get an understanding of, you know, in the project, what are the things that have really gone well. So we've established that it's already gone well. And then, you know, because there's always room for improvement. So what would you do differently is an invitation to say, what are the areas we could improve? And then where would you like to see this improvement? You know, what's your vision? And then what's the first thing you can do to help make that change? And so very quickly, just in 4 questions, you've kind of reflected, you've celebrated, you know, all the things that have done really well. You found out, well, what could we do that's even better? And we've got some tangible steps that we can take to actually move forward. So this touches on the full spectrum of celebration, not just the congratulations and that set part of the celebration, but also the feedback for how we can move forward. So the most difficult thing is celebrating differences. Usually differences create clash instead. So again, that's down to attitudes. That's down to, you know, if people are very dogmatic and very stuck in their way of thinking and believe that only they are right, and their way is the only way, then yes, it's going to create clash. However, if you're going to, for me personally, for me to live in a community of people, there's a few things for me that's really important. One, the most important thing is people's ability to self-reflect. So what we can recognize is that everyone is amazing. Everyone is a beautiful human being and a beautiful soul, but none of us are perfect. We are all going to mess up at some point. It's how we respond to messing up is the key. So from both sides. So the person who messed up, they're no, I was fine. No, I didn't do anything wrong. And then of course, you know, nothing's going to change. Whereas if you can self-reflect and say, oh yeah, I'm really sorry. I see what I've done there. I sincerely apologize for what I've done there. Let me have a think about how I can, you know, and to start at least acknowledging that you have made a mistake, first thing. And then how other people respond to you is equally important. And if they, oh, you're a bad person, you must, we must kill you, we must kick you out. If you know, if everyone is so dogmatic that you make one little slip and bang, you're enemy number one, then clearly, you know, you're never going to have a community. Whereas if people can say, look, I recognize you're human, we love you, and we recognize you made a mistake, you recognize you made a mistake, let's work this through, let's see how we can avoid making this happen again, then we can move together, then we can move forward. But if we, you know, if either party stays really dogmatic and really hard, and then nothing will change. So for me, that's the most important part about community, is people's flexibility and their ability to self-reflect and learn and grow. So that's, for me, is the most important thing.
Yeah,
So
thank you. There's another
time for a few more
special question.
Yep, go on.
If you would like, Paul asked another question, if you may, and he said, thank you for replying on the first one. Is there something you are currently exploring in your spiritual relationship with the earth? For example, at the moment, I'm exploring how I relate to the wind here in the different seasons and the kind of energy it brings, how we respond to it physically and emotionally, etc., etc. Right now, it's 80 kilometers an hour. So it's an open question if something occurs in your mind.
I guess everyone has a different. So I run a course which I call a holistic life design course, and basically I use a particular tantric tool which looks at mental, physical, and spiritual balance. And the first thing we need to do, everyone knows what physical is, everyone can understand what mental is, but everyone has a very different interpretation of spiritual. So the first thing we need to do is define what we mean by spiritual. And to keep it non-dogmatic and to keep it open and accessible to all, very often the definition we come to is your connection to the outside world and your relationship to the outside world. So yeah, your physical is obviously your physical entity, your physical tangible body. The mental is, your thoughts and your feelings, etc., which, verges on physical as well. But then anything that is external to you, is how we define spiritual. So pretty much everything I do has some kind of spiritual resonance. So if I can't say there's anything specific that that jumps to mind in terms of, let me read the question again. Currently exploring in your spiritual relationship with Earth. I mean, ever since I was 4 years old, I've had a spiritual relationship with Earth. So, just as a 4-year-old, we were lucky to have a back garden, a small back garden, but, a garden full of butterflies and spiders and, watching caterpillars, go into cocoons and turn into, I was like, wow. Like as a 4-year-old and watching this, and having my first cucumber plant given by my mother and watching this thing start to grow and oh my, and then wow, cucumbers and just this connection to, but why, what's how, wow, just this absolute excitement. And if I'm honest, at 53 years old, I'm still like that. I'm still, I still go out and I still find little things, and anyone who goes on a wild food walk with me knows that, oh my, wow, look at this. And, because life is that exciting for me. So I have that complete wonderment and awe of everything that is everything in this world. And, so whether it's different peoples, different plants, different animals, different fungi, different whatever, everything. And so for me to say one thing, I'm exploring one thing, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine ever narrowing my thoughts down one particular avenue. Is there something interesting that I found very recently? I guess, I'm kind of happy with this Berberis, which is a particular type of Berberis darwinii, which I collected and dried. and they're not particularly the tastiest thing on earth. But then I fermented it with as a second ferment of my kombucha, and wow, fantastic. And this is pure medicine. This is pure medicine. I woke up, as I say, I had a fever for, I think, since it started Wednesday night, and certainly by Thursday I was full on fever. Thursday, Friday, what's today, Saturday or Sunday? However many days.
Saturday.
I've lost a few days anyway. So a few days in this full on fever, and you know, and yeah, again, the wonderment of my garden and all the medicines. And I don't eat onions and garlic and things, but in a situation like this where I need medicine, went straight to my garden, dug up some of these perennial onions, and bang, just blasts everything out. And so I woke up this morning with kidney pains because of all the extra stress that my body, as it's trying to cleanse itself, is putting on the kidneys. And this berberis, fantastic. Now couldn't even tell that I had kidney pains, which I had this morning. So just the wonderment of nature, just the wonderment of all the healing plants out there. And you know, I collected goji berries as well, and that's another really great cure for colds and fevers and things. You know, again, straight from the garden, and yeah, stuff like that. So I guess, yeah, that's what I'm really fascinated by, is just the relationship between plants and humans and their healing properties.
Thank you so much, Rakesh.
Basically, to live in community is not straightforward. It's not easy, simply because we just do not have the skills, the tools to actually live together. We don't have the skills to listen to each other and adapt to each other. Once we learn those skills, then it becomes really so much more beautiful. It still isn't easy, but it all of a sudden becomes much more beautiful. So the key takeaway is to learn to listen, to learn to self-reflect, to understand yourself and understand what you're doing well, what you're not doing so well, and be adjustable and be adaptable. And to be joyful and to love and respect all differences, because that's what makes this world such a beautiful place. So I think that's my closing sentiments.